Glad I'm shitting on that.
I know,
need
it's
the whole
a good
truth.
refresh. Exactly, I need it.
And I've also
I need
got
a refresher.
a new bill that's being completed in Tomball in the, is it the PUD or the
PID.
The PID.
So that
You know
was,
what the PID fee is?
no.
It's gonna be between $2,500 and $3,500 a year for the next 20 years.
But that's not what they're charging now.
Yeah, it is.
The whole
It
city?
is?
The city.
It's a
No,
new
no, not the
bill.
whole city.
Okay,
Like
we
they
wanna
no,
just
no.
start.
Yeah, no,
Now-
it's just,
Yeah, let's
Is it- is
that
it-
was
is
just
it
a,
time?
that was just a
It's
Q,
10 o'clock.
that was just a
Okay.
Q&A. He
All right,
wasn't
this
really
is good.
beginning
So
yet.
let me start off by saying, when I came to Sharon's office in '98, they,
Look what she's got.
the career development and everybody said you have to get involved with your neighborhood. And so the logical choice is let's go talk to the HOA and start going to HOA meetings. And so I started there. And after my second HOA meeting, I said, oh, hell no. I can't hang out with these people.
Smart.
And somebody in the office, it was either John Bradford or one of the agents we had, he was a water board director, and he said, well, get on your water board. Nobody wants to do it, and it's fun. And so I started going to water district meetings. And a water district meeting, you have 5 directors in a water district. And at every meeting, once a month, you have an attorney consultant, a bookkeeper, an engineer, a tax collector. I missed one. But anyway, it's run like a business. And I thought, this is so cool. And it's, I mean, it is strict parliamentary procedure. We can't discuss anything that's not on the agenda. The agenda has to be posted for the public. And so after this 1 or 2 meetings, they said, why are you coming to this? I said, I want to get involved. I want to volunteer for my neighborhood. I want to be here. And I'm also a real estate agent, and y'all don't have a real estate agent on the board. Well, one of the board directors was retiring, and they said, you want to do it? And I said, sure. And so they appointed me. I've been a director for over 15 years. I'm actually technically an elected official, but I've never had an election. We haven't had an election in our district in 25, 30 years. We have to advertise in the neighborhood newspaper when we have a vacancy because no one wants to do it. And I remember my first official meeting when they swore me in, the attorney sends me what is it when you fill out for taxes for getting a paycheck? W-2 or 10? Yeah. She said, fill this out. I said, what for? You get paid to be on the water district. You get $150 a day anytime you serve for the district. And so I go to regional water authority meetings, I go to flood meetings. Just for the last 15 years, I've gone to every flood meeting, every Northwest Harris County Regional Water Authority meetings, we go to all the meetings. We go to water conferences twice a year to learn about water. I remember I was in Dallas at a water conference, and it was on surface water, which we'll talk about a little bit. And they said, I hope you don't own a house on Lake Houston or Lake Conroe. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Well, that's water supply for Houston. It's not they're not recreational lakes first. They're water first. And they'll drain those things to the bottom if we have a bad drought. Okay. So that's how I started getting involved with water. And I found that it's fascinating. The price of water, by the way, y'all know what happens tomorrow, right?
Why?
Your water goes up again. 35 cents a thousand. It's April 1st. It goes up April 1st, every April 1st until we catch up with the amount of money we're spending. So what does the price of water, the flooding from Harvey, and your property taxes all have in common?
We don't like it.
They're too hard.
You know, like expensive. How much does it go up on?
Subsidence. Oh, y'all pass it down. This is an amazing graphic. This is subsidence The gray is the greater Houston, Harris County area. There's Galveston Bay to the right. The red lines are contour lines. Sorry. The red lines are contour lines on how much the ground has sunk since 1906.
Sunk?
Sunk. Look at Jersey Village. Can you see the little bitty circle up toward the left? Jersey Village is sunk 7 feet.
7 feet.
Wow.
7 feet. Look where we are. We're in the 3 to 4 foot range. All right, you think that has effect on flooding?
Yeah.
So what caused this? They started noticing this, and there's a subdivision. There's a subdivision on the northeast end of Galveston Bay called Brownwood. And back in the early 1900s, Brownwood was an engineering executive community for Exxon. Big 2-story houses, swimming pools, 3-car garages, beautiful, beautiful neighborhood. Fast forward to today, it's only accessible by boat.
Where's this?
Wow.
Brownwood, just Google Brownwood, and the pictures are amazing. There's an oil field just adjacent to Brownwood that they started pulling water out, and we were also pulling, they're pulling oil out, and we were pulling water out from underneath the oil. And now that's part of Galveston Bay. It's never dry land anymore. So what happened in the about 1980s, Harris County said, we can't do this anymore. We're sucking all the water out. And the way our land is, our soils, they're sandy and clay. And when we take the water out, they compress. But they don't regenerate when the water comes back. In Austin, they have the aquifer, and that does regenerate, but the land doesn't move. So once our land subsides, it doesn't come back. So they said in about 1980, they said, okay, they formed the Houston Galveston Subsidence District. And they said, they put forth a schedule of, we have to stop pulling water out of the ground. And we have these milestones that we have got to cut back our pumping, okay? So they created 5 regional water authorities. We're in the Northwest Regional Water Authority. There's a meeting every first Monday of the month. We're doing it Zoom right now. And you just go to the website, log in, and you can join the meeting. It's free. But their office is at Walters Road and 1960 in that office building. And the regional water authorities are charged with the delivery of surface water. Okay, so we have Lake Conroe, Lake Houston, and I brought you copies of, y'all probably got one of these in the mail. I bring these to open houses, they're free. And it's just information, it's great information, and I'll pass these out. But this is giving you the status of the water projects. So Lake Houston, Lake Conroe is not enough water for the amount of people we have. So we're building the Trinity River project, Loose Bayou. What we've done is the water authorities and City of Houston partnered, and they built a pumping station on the Trinity River. Because way back when these lakes were created, Lake Livingston was also a water supply for the City of Houston, because we knew we were going to need it. So the water, we're going to bring water from from the Trinity River, and we're going to pump it all the way into Lake Houston as we need it. Okay. The way the laws are, we can't pay for all this, and it's billions of dollars. I mean, it's big money. We can't pay for that with tax revenue because of the way the state water laws are. It has to be with use fees. Regional Water Authority pumpage fee on your water bill. We started at 10 cents. I didn't write that down. We started at 10 cents 15, 20 years ago. And the regional water authority is trying to keep the water price as low as they can for as long as they can. But, and we're almost at the top, by the way. We're almost capped out at how much the regional water authority thinks they're gonna need to pay for all this infrastructure. Another side part of that is, since this is coming out of Lake Houston, which City of Houston owns, we're buying the water from City of Houston. So we have a partnership with them. The City of Houston, this whole boil water notice with the freeze was just a disaster. My phone was blowing up. In our district, we lost power and our generator failed. So we lost water pressure. Well, if you go below 20 PSI for water pressure, state requires you put out boil water notices. You don't have a choice. So we were the first district to put up boil water notices up. We got our generator back up, got our pressure back up. My neighbors were saying, do you have to boil water? Do you have to boil water? I said, I'm required to tell you, you have to boil your water. And they said, are you boiling yours? I said, no.
What water district are you in?
Terra Nova West mud.
Okay.
That's Terra Nova West, Villanova, Terra Vista. We have Park. But anyway, since we're buying our water from the City of Houston, we have to follow everything the City of Houston does. So you've heard all kinds of stories that the City of Houston is way far behind when it comes to fixing water main breaks and stuff. Well, so if the City of Houston in a bad summer has a lot of water leaks and they start losing water pressure and they go on rationing of water, we have to do it too. We don't have a choice.
Does that include all of the, just?
Everybody in the regional water
In
authorities.
the region?
And a good question, because the regional water authorities go from South Fort Bend, all of Sugar Land, all of Caton, all of Conroe, all the way out to Montgomery. One of the things that is a sticking point for me that I don't like is Lake Conroe, the Woodlands and Conroe have water rights on that lake, as does the regional water authority. But we don't have the water until it comes out of the dam. The Woodlands has put a straw in right there on that side of the dam, and Conroe has built a water plant on the lake. And I think right now they get, I think it's about 6 inches a year out of the lake. That's a lot of water. They don't have to pay a regional water authority pumpage fee. And that's just, it was the same water, but ours went through the dam. We have to pay it. Everybody's gonna have to be on surface water, and I didn't bring the latest one of these, but we still dropped like 2 inches last year. The spring area, 77379 since last year, because we're still pulling water out. Not as much. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, the question came up with the PID. So why do we have all these PIDS, PUDS? The City of Houston has the city limits, okay? If you're in the city limits of Houston, city limits are, Houston is charging you city taxes, and they provide city services. There are just a couple of MUDs within the city limits of Houston, not very many, and I don't even know where they are. But they pay double tax. They pay a MUD tax and a city tax. So let's get outside of the city limits. We're in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of Houston. That is all of the rest of Harris County, unless it's an incorporated city like Tomball. And Tomball has their own little ETJ. But like Bunker Hill Village, Bel Air, all those are cities, right? So they have they're responsible for their own water. Well, they're probably mostly buying it from the city of Houston. So PIDS, PID is a public improvement district. A PID is, and the best examples of that pass those back, please. And this, I first learned about PIDS when Raleigh Creek was just being put in on Zion. and I took a client and, does everybody have one? I took a client to Raleigh Creek, and I've been hanging out with water long enough and understanding water district taxes. I asked the salesperson what their tax rate was, and she said it was like 2.4, something like that, 2.3, 2.4. And I said, your city limits of Tomball. And she said, no, we're in their ETJ. And I said, you don't have a MUD? She said, no. I said, who paid for the infrastructure for the water in the neighborhood? She said she didn't know. And she called somebody and she said, oh, we're in a PID. And what a PID means is the developer put in the infrastructure. The city of Tomball is going to eventually own it. The city of Tomball didn't want to pay for it. So there is a PID fee. It's either a 15-year fee or a 20-year fee. And that particular house that I was in Raleigh Creek, it was $3,600 for 20 years. However, a PID is tax deductible, so it kind of replaces your MUD tax. But this first sheet, this is an actual MLS sold. I'm not going to say a word about the company that represented D.R. Horton, but so they were making Raleigh Creek, and they had all these good builders in there, and they couldn't sell them because after the sales staff found out what a PID was and that there was a massive fee once a year for 20 years, they had to disclose that. Okay. This house, I wrote on the bottom, the PID fee is $245 a month or $2,940 on this sold property. Is it anywhere in MLS?
How would that compare to a MUD fee, or is there a MUD in the PIDS?
No, you don't have those. No.
Okay, so how, but MUD taxes are that this high?
My taxes can be a little higher. Yes.
Even higher?
Yes, yes.
So you have either or?
Either or.
So can you pay it monthly? I have not gotten a straight answer on this.
Okay, so turn to the second page.
Okay.
The second page is another house down the street, active, and they're saying at the bottom of this that you can pay it monthly.
So you, wouldn't they escrow that with the rest of your school taxes for your mortgage?
If your mortgage company might,
What?
your mortgage company might, but
It's a tax.
yeah, it's a tax. It's a tax, exactly. So
I've
So-
been told
Yep.
by Raleigh Creek that it's annual.
and the house is on Huffsmith Core Building. That PID is annual.
And I've been told by Copper Cove that if you finance through them, that it will be included.
That's why I said it would depend on the mortgage company. Okay, so if you're not in the city limits, of a city, and you're not in a PID, then you're going to either have a MUD, municipal utility district, a public utility district, public water, or some variation, an ID, that's the other one. So an ID is an improvement district. The closest ID to us is the Exxon campus and that neighborhood just to the west of there. One of the agents came to me a couple weeks ago, and there's a house that one of the agents in his office has listed, and it's been on the market for a while. And they were trying to figure out why it had been on the market for a while, and the taxes were listed at 4.3, I believe. And so I started looking into that, and I pulled it up on HCAD, and it said it was an ID. And I'm like, hell is an ID? I've not heard of that one. And so I researched it, and it's an improvement district. So back up a little bit. For the last 4 legislative sessions, Harris County has wanted the water districts to pay for streets and storm sewers. They don't take care of it. They want us to take care of it. Well, we don't have that in our budget. We're not collecting taxes for that. Harris County is. Okay. So the ID is their new, since they have not been able to get that in the legislature passed, we're not responsible for storm sewers and streets. They created an ID. And it is a water district that is responsible for water and sewer, streets, storm sewers, gutters, employment, and some healthcare.
What?
What neighborhood is that in?
I don't remember the name of the neighborhood. It's in the five,
Greenwood's Village?
it's in like the 500,000 range,
Yeah.
400 to 500,000 range, just west of Exxon.
Mhm.
And it's not horrible. It's like $1.30 per hundred. I mean, it's like double what a mud rate is. But so those people are paying Harris County to not do stuff. It's just a new way to raise your taxes. Okay, pick on Candlelight Hills again. Candlelight Hills has public water. They don't have a mud tax. They don't have any kind of water tax at all. Well, what's that mean? That means that your bill pays for all of the maintenance, all of the delivery of water and sanitary sewer. Their water bill is pretty high. But what's that? Roddy Fuzzle, Bender's Landing. Bender's Landing has a private well for the neighborhood. And that's gonna have to go on surface water eventually. So it's all across the board. There's all kind of different ways we can get our water. And so when I go to the water forum, and Linda will ask me all the time, you know, how this form should be filled out. And by the way, there's 3 water district notices, and all 3 are okay. One of them is a little easier to fill out than the rest. But the easiest way to tell how to fill the water form out is to pull the tax record, pull HCAD or pull MCAD, whatever. And if there's a mud tax, well, then you need the form. If there's a city tax, you don't need the form. It's real easy. If Candlelight Hills does not need a form because it doesn't have a mud. Bender's Landing, it could be debatable if they have to have a form, but since they're not collecting taxes, you wouldn't need the form. So the way it works is they want to make a development. Glenlock Farms, when they bought the horse farm and to turn it into a master plan community, it did not have a water district. So the developers of Glenlock Farms went to TCEQ, that's the Texas Center for Environmental Quality. They're responsible for all the water in the state of Texas. And they said, okay, we're going to make I don't know what's your water district called there, Glenlock Farms Mud or whatever. And they look at what you are going to build, and they say you have the authority to issue X number of millions of dollars of bonds, okay? $100 million in bonds, you're authorized to issue. And when they start working on the subdivision and they start building houses and they start building a tax base, they can start issuing those bonds to pay the developer back for putting in the infrastructure. Make sense? So the goal is to pay off your infrastructure through the bonds and then pay off your bonds. Because your water tax is paying for the bonds and paying for the operations district. Your mud tax has 2 components. It has an operations component. You don't need to write this down. This is just for you. But you have an operations component and you have a debt component. Terranova West Mud will be debt-free April of next year. We will have paid off all of our bonds. And we have also issued 99% of what was authorized to be issued. So we can't borrow any more money. After you pay the bonds off, you can't borrow anymore. Yes.
Okay. How does Glenlock Farms, how are they able to have the water district pay $3 million for brick fences?
Okay.
We have two water
Oh,
districts.
but
And
one of them, both of them, paid, or just one
I
of them?
think both of them were kicking in for their,
so Sharon, there's a building right in front of Bridgestone. there's a Bridgestone mud building. That building cost $3.5 million of taxpayer money because they wanted a place where they could teach people about water. I was furious when I heard about it. Yeah, that's money out, that's money out of y'all's pockets.
That
So
thing
one
over
of
there,
one of my-
Kirkendall?
Huh?
That thing over there off of Kirkendall where all the constables are parking?
Yeah, and they rent,
That's
and
$3 million?
$3.5 million, and they rent part of that out to the constables, so they're getting a little revenue off of it. That's cool. So we're in one of our meetings. One of my board directors said, "Steve, you got a problem with that?" And I said, "Hell yeah, I got a problem with that. That's taxpayer money." He said, "Well, they had it." Yeah. So Sharon, they can do that because water districts can, without going to the public for a vote, do things to enhance the neighborhood. Okay, we have a park. We did have an election in our neighborhood to buy that park. That park cost $1 million. It was floodplain land. We bought it and we built it into a park, private park for the neighborhood only. And that we as a board said we need to go to the neighborhood and get a vote. I'm not spending $1 million of my neighbor's money without that. However, we're doing some things. The HOAs are always broke. And our HOA is way expensive. They resurface the tennis courts every other year. But we're taking over as a mud board, we're taking over some of the landscaping on the medians and stuff. We partnered with Trees of Houston. If you drive down Cypress Wood right now, we just planted another 50 trees. They're free. We planted over 300 15-gallon trees in our neighborhood. And Trees of Houston gives us the trees, and they're good quality trees. They're not pine trees. They're magnolias and varieties of oaks. We just have to plant them and maintain them. Well, our gardens does our water district grass and stuff. Well, since they really like our business, they plant the trees for free. So the net result is it doesn't cost not one tax dollar. It is very, very interesting on mud boards. I am the fiscal conservative of the water district. I think the best way, I want to maintain everything we have. I want the neighborhood to look nice, and we can put fences up too. But I stopped there. One of the board directors, we have 2 detention ponds behind the Oaks of Terra Nova West and behind Terra Vista. And he wants to put the crushed granite walking paths around both those ponds. Well, my contention is there's only a handful of people that even know those ponds exist. They're behind the houses. There's $200,000 a pond. And I'm not spending the money for that. I would rather lower the tax rate. I think if, so we're gonna have our taxes paid off, our bonds paid off next year. In my real estate opinion, I think our neighborhood looks more favorable on a resale market when our tax rate's lower. I just think it does.
But then I think the problem is that then the HOA would have to take over the improvements, keeping up the clubhouse, et cetera.
We would still take care of all of that.
You still have the money to.
Sure, because, so in our district,
So
the
you
tax,
can't borrow more, but
No.
you're collecting.
we're,
Okay, you can't spend more.
we operate, Terra Nova West Water District operates, we're nonprofit, and by the way, that's a great question. All of the water authorities are nonprofit. Okay, they can spend money on fences, but it's nonprofit. But we have a lot of money in the bank. We have $4 million in the bank. We have almost 3 full years of revenue in the bank, earning a little bit of interest. And we're going to start using some of that money to pay down our tax rate. Now, in our district, we use our tax rate as part of our operating revenue. So rather than me raising your water bill another $20 a month, I'm charging you $20 a month on taxes. So at least you can use it as a tax write-off. And a lot of districts do that. Okay.
Went back up a little bit. You said whenever you have the authority and money to build fences. So let's Well, your neighbors over there at Village and Champions, those fences alongside, those brick walls along Cypress Wood.
Mhm.
Like, you're telling me that our mud can take over the responsibility of those?
They would have to have money,
Uh-huh.
and they would have to have the public willing to do that. Okay, we have brick wall by our park, right?
Yeah.
If you've ever been down Terra Nova West, Cypress Wood, you get to the parks at Terra Nova West, we got the soccer field, we got TC Jester, then we got the 5-acre park,
Mhm.
the clubhouse, and this beautiful brick wall that goes to Macrantha. And it stops.
Right.
And then there's a nasty wood fence for the last house. Okay, when we built the park, we approached everybody that fence would impact. And we said, we want to build a brick fence. It's part of the budget for the park. And everybody said, heck yeah, you maintain it, it's your fence. I never have to put a fence up again, and it's beautiful, it's brick.
Yeah.
And the guy that lives on the corner said, no way,
Wow,
don't come on my property.
wow,
And so we didn't build a fence there.
wow.
And
That's
so
really.
so when he did that, the next thing I did was I contacted the management company for the subdivision and said his fence is ugly and it needs to be replaced. So they made him replace his fence.
He showed you.
Okay, so we did PIDS, we did that.
He just shot himself in the foot when he goes to sell his house.
Okay, another water thing that's way cool, way cool. We talked about black fire hydrants in the meeting yesterday. Pink pipe. Right now they're putting pink pipe in Champion Forest just south of Cypress Wood along Cypress Creek. They've dumped a whole bunch of pink pipe there at Ravenel. There's a water plant there at Ravenel. And you're gonna start seeing pink pipe going in on TC Jester between Cypress Wood and Spring Creek Oaks. So we're paying, the new price for water is going to be $4.60 per thousand for groundwater, for surface water, and $5.05 for every gallon we pump out of the ground. So we have a disincentive fee to quit pumping water. So the regional water authority said, you know, we have a lot of potential for reuse water. Pink pipe is reuse. There's a sewage treatment plant at Bilma, which is Spring Creek Oaks. And we have entered into a contractual agreement with Bilma. When they treat their sewage water, it goes into Spring Gully. And it goes from Spring Gully to Cypress Creek, to Lake Houston, back through the sewage treatment, the water treatment plant, and then it gets pumped back here. That's all expensive to do all that. So the regional water authorities have said, look, if you will do a reuse project, you won't pay $4.60, you'll pay $2.30. And we're like, we did the math and we're spending a couple $1 million. It pays for itself in a couple of years. And that water will be used to water the park, water the medians. We're gonna sell some of it to Old Oaks to water their medians. We're gonna sell it to the car wash at Circle K. We're gonna use it to irrigation for the Palms office complex there on Louetta. We know where all the water's gonna go, and it's gonna save tons and tons of money.
Go buy some, like we're right next to you.
So when I was at a water conference, I love this story. If you drink a glass of water in a hotel room in New Orleans, comes from Mississippi River, it's been through 7 people already.
It's been through 7 people. Well, we're not, it's been through 7 people.
So when I was a brand new water board director, when I was a brand new water board director, we're in a summer drought and there's water in Cypress Creek. I'm like, why? And so dumb question, I said, why is there water in Cypress Creek when we're in the middle of the drought? And the engineer starts, he said, just our 5 districts that operate the sewage treatment plant at the back of Oak Creek next to Old Oaks. Is that Oak Creek? Oak Creek. We drop 1 million gallons of gray water in Cypress Creek every day.
What is going on?
Gray water is treated sewage. It's not, you can't drink it, but you can water grass and your kids can play on that grass. I'm just saying. Yes,
Is it comparable to the water that comes from, septic, the area?
no, it's cleaner, much cleaner, much cleaner than
Aerobic.
aerobic septic
Thank you.
systems. No, it is. It's gone through complete sewage treatment, it's gone through chlorine treatment, it's gone through, a sand filter. It's, had other, one of the biggest problems we have with treating water in this region, and when they opened up the East Houston water plant on Lake Houston, it took months and months and months to get the water clean enough to where you could drink it. They really had a hard time with it. Is nitrogen. Why do we have a nitrogen problem? Because people fertilize everything. Being on water, okay. I'm not a water hawk. We're very careful at our house with water usage. I have watered my grass over the last 4 years, no more than 10 times.
Do you have green grass?
It's the best yard in the neighborhood. My grass is green. I've never put 1 ounce of weed killer on it. I've never put 1 ounce of fertilizer on it, and I've been there 30 years.
Yeah, what's the secret?
You start raising your lawnmower up. You cut your grass. By the time late June hits, my mower is as high as it can cut. Okay, my grass is this tall, but it's all the exact same height. So it doesn't look long.
Yeah.
You walk in it and you're like, God, this grass is long. But you don't have to water it. When you see, in the middle of summer, when you see somebody's lawn that's got tinges of yellow, they cut it so short, and then they gotta water the heck out of it, and then they gotta fertilize it because it's no longer green. We've had several teaching things like this at our clubhouse, and I'll have neighbors come to my yard, and they're like, you don't fertilize? No, you don't water. I watered 1 time last year. Watered the grass 1 time last year. My flower beds, we put all very, except for the freeze, tolerant plants for this region. I only water my flower beds when it's time to make my foundation wet. And that's like once every 3-4 weeks. We don't water. We have a swimming pool, and I can't stand having a pool. But that's the biggest water hog that we have. And the funny part is it's worse in the winter because there's no humidity. I'll lose 1 inch of water in a week, and that's 1,000 gallons of water. That's just wasteful. Okay, any other questions about water?
Can we go back to the PID for 1 second? So I have a new buyer, we're closing April the 29th in Tomball in a PID.
Okay.
And we were told that they, of course, now you realize that the.
Well, we have licenses and salespeople.
Yeah, exactly. So what should I do?
What subdivision?
It's
Well,
it's a new one.
Unfortunately,
But I thought you said that you either have a pit or a mud. And so wouldn't that be, would a pit always be more expensive than a mud? Or-
actually, most PIDs are less expensive than a
So then
mud.
why would it be a problem if you have a pit?
Yeah.
I'm
So,
Because it's
and-
senior.
yeah, and great, well, but also the PID goes away. The
Yeah,
PID
after
PID goes
20
away.
years.
Yeah.
They average 20 years.
What, the lesser expensive homes on Hub Smith is 15.
Yeah, he told us it's
Yeah.
15.
So what is the maximum mud tax? Maximum mud tax is about $1.60. And you add that to the $2.20 for the county and the schools. And one of the reasons why I like having this discussion, particularly with agents that are relatively new, is let's take a $300,000 house in Champion South. And then let's take a $300,000 house across, and I'm making these numbers up, across the street from Hooks Airport where the mud tax is $1.20. And I think that's pretty close. What's the difference in house payment for a $300,000 house in Champion South, which has no mud tax, and that house? Well, $1.20 times 3 is $360. Put a 0 on that, 3,600 divided by 12. $300 a month. Okay. In Copperfield, you have several sections of Copperfield that have 2 water taxes. Champion South, by the way, is going to start charging taxes again.
Why would they want to? Yeah.
Because they overlap. The developers, the MUDs cooperated to build this section and put the infrastructure in it, so they share it. We are a sister district with Terra Nova, 2 different water districts. Terra Nova is Luetta Road, but we're sister districts. And they're 40% responsible for some of our repairs and maintenance, and we're 60% responsible for some of theirs. It's a shared agreement. We share water. All of the water goes through us to get to them. So the city of Houston charges us, we charge them. They own the lift station that's on Cypress Wood in front of the retirement home community. They own that, but we're responsible for some of the repair and maintenance on that. So they're sharing.
Tell me why other cities don't have MUDs like San Antonio.
There are more MUDs in southeast Texas than anywhere else.
Okay.
It's just how the
Is it because we have
founding government. So why hasn't the city of Houston annexed Champions?
But it's too expensive.
They would have to pay
They
off
have
the
to
mud.
provide the water.
They would have to pay off the mud debt.
But like when they annexed Kingwood, then they didn't have a mud tax anymore, but their water's more expensive and they have a city tax, is that
Correct.
right?
Absolutely. And when they did that, and I just found this out when that house that you're going to go open house this weekend, I got a listing just north of Kingwood, and I was doing my research on mud form, not mud form, and different things, and it's actually, the address is Porter, Texas. But I pulled up the ETJ for Houston, and when Houston annexed Kingwood, they went north of Cleveland with their
Oh, gosh. Oh, wow.
well, Conroe's doubled in size.
Yeah, it sure.
They doubled their ETJ, and what that's basically doing is saying we claim this land, but we're not going to do anything with it yet. Oh, another and taxes just irritate them. If you go to the commercial in front of Prestonwood, there's a couple hotels there, there's restaurants and stuff. It's not the city of Houston. You pay city of Houston sales tax.
Oh, wow.
Because, and this is illegal now, but it was legal 10 years ago. The city of Houston the city of Houston went to Prestonwood MUD and said, we're going to annex you. Your bonds are almost paid off, and we want the revenue from those commercial buildings up front. And they said, we don't want you to annex us. And they said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll charge city of Houston sales tax. You collect it for us. You keep part of it and give the rest to us. And so that's what they did. So you're paying city of Houston taxes outside the city limits of Houston. Anyway, okay. Now let's talk about property taxes. So let me just real quick. So on an average mortgage, and understanding that somewhere around 30% of houses that are purchased are paid for by cash, but for the rest of the 70% of the world that have mortgages, our monthly payment is approximately third taxes, right? It is. So as real estate agents, shouldn't we know taxes backwards, forwards, in every way possible, to where we can, when we're pulling houses to show our clients, one of the first things we look at, what's that tax rate? You know, is it at below 3? Is it, there's some subdivisions over off of Barker Cypress in 290 that are over 4.2. Yeah, it's horrible. I just think it's critical to
So
our
what would
clients.
that, so there's a school tax, a mud tax, a live tax, and the property taxes for everybody. So what would make 1.4 and 1.2, would it mainly be the mud?
Only the money.
Only the mud, so everything else is
Everything else is
the
within,
ambulance
everything else is
district.
within pennies.
Okay.
Everything is the mud tax, absolutely. Those of you that own houses, do you know what your tax rate is? Just,
Too much, 2.7.
yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Do you know how much you're paying per kilowatt hour for electricity? You should know. You know how many gallons of water you use a month? You should know. Anyway. So property taxes are so important. And the first thing I got on my yellow pad here is, property taxes are always part of my listing presentation.
Okay. I'm
sorry,
sorry, the listing present?
Yeah, you call me to come talk to you about selling your house, the first thing I do is, and it takes 5 minutes, is I do a complete tax workup on your house. First thing I do is go to HCAT. And you're selling the house, you live in it, I check for a homestead exemption. And we figured maybe that 7% of people don't know they get exemptions. And we're gonna talk about prospecting, and Mimi's, I'm glad she's here. But not just for that. So I went on a listing presentation one time, a couple of years ago. I didn't get it, they ended up not selling the house. But they didn't have a homestead exemption. And so I went into MLS. When did they buy the house? 5 years ago. So at my listing presentation, I had a homestead form completely filled out, except for their birthday and the driver's license number. I had an envelope made out to Harris County Appraisal District with a stamp on it.
And they didn't pick you?
They didn't sell their house.
Oh,
They
okay.
didn't sell their house. But
Okay.
it took me 5 minutes. I said, sign here, let me take a picture of your driver's license.
Yeah.
5 months later, they got a check for $4,000.
Wow. Oh, you can go back.
Yes.
Wow.
How far does it go?
So
Interesting.
this is the cool part. On the form, you can go back 1 year. So if this is end of March, if you own your house, if you owned it, primary residence, January 1st of 2020, then you can file your exemption for 2020 and get your exemption for 20 and 21. Now you've already paid 20's taxes, so you're gonna get a refund. Now, some jurisdictions will not automatically send the refund, but it'll be credited on the next one. So it really doesn't matter. I learned this from Charisse in Chicago years ago. She said, ask for every year that they're due. I got a 65 exemption. They won't do it today. This was 15 years ago. I got 7 years of a 65 exemption for a client. 7 years. It was almost $10,000.
So how do you ask where they go now?
I'm trying one right now for 4 years. I'm in the middle of one for 4 years right now. But I'm for sure, absolutely, without question, 1 year.
Now, the homestead exemption though freezes at I was thinking the 65. Freezes the taxes, but not the mud, right?
Okay, so we're gonna get into the exemptions.
Oh, sorry.
But it freezes the school tax only. It freezes the school tax, and it starts a fuse to eliminate the school taxes. Okay, my parents' house is in Spring Shadows. It's worth what, 3.5, something like that. Their total tax bill last year was under $600.
Wow.
Because their school tax is gone. Mom's 90. So we'll talk about that. So I also use property taxes as a touch for my database, for my circle of influence. I contact my circle of influence every year, let them know it's tax protest season. If they're not protesting their taxes, they need to. If you own a home or a piece of property, and you're not protesting your taxes every year, you're voluntarily paying too much. It's just that simple. There's two ways to file a protest. One is unequal appraised value. And in this market, excuse me, unequal sales price. And in this market, you're not going to win. You're just not going to win because the sales prices are off the charts. The other way is unequal appraised, which means my neighbor's house is just like mine, and you're charging them less tax than you're charging me.
So they don't lower yours and they raise his.
No, no.
But neighbor, don't tell anybody.
Neighbor, you hate.
Okay, let's talk about the exemptions a little bit. On the homestead form, I think it says you have to file your homestead exemption by April 1st.
April 30.
Whatever, ignore that. I've talked to Harris County several times and they said that's a guideline. You can file your homestead exemption anytime during the year that you own the home January 1st. 65 exemption is a birthday present. When you buy a house and you're over 65, you get it that day.
What about veterans?
Veterans, they're instant.
Because my client is saying that they're telling him that he can't file it till January next year, when I just posted them.
The HCAD, and I was having this conversation with our tax collector in our water district. Because of COVID, all of our government agencies are understaffed and they're not getting stuff done. And it's like the IRS, you can call the IRS 10 different times, get 10 different answers. We had to do Dad's probate via Zoom, which was interesting. I just made me think of something. We finished probate, and I told my attorney, I said, okay, and by the way, this is a probate attorney, Mimi and I both use her. She's in the front of Glenlock Farm, she's a rock star. She's amazing. But I said, okay, I need to fill out the homestead form on behalf of my mother so that she gets my exemption. And she said, don't you dare do that. I said, well, what? And, I wanted to tell her, I'm a tax guy, I know. And she said, no, Harris County now requires a deed. So, and she said, and she did not charge me for this.
It required deed.
The deed signed by me, the deeding Dad, deceased father's half of the property to her. All right, and she said, you don't do a thing until you get the recorded copy back. So I got the recorded copy back and I sent it to paper. Because if you screw it up, yeah, and I'll tell you another thing that I learned with dealing with mom and dad. You know, a little green card you get in the mail saying you have a homestead exemption. All right, that's third class mail. It does not get forwarded. If that card goes back to Harris County, you lose your homestead exemption.
Can I ask about,
Yes.
You mentioned veteran exemption, what's that?
So disabled
Oh,
disabled
disability
veterans,
veteran.
there's some really good exemptions.
So how does he do that now?
I've not done very many
But
veterans.
tell him not to give up.
I tell them not to give up.
Okay, that's good.
So what are the exemptions? So each jurisdiction, each taxing entity has a different amount of exemptions. The schools, the school districts, and there's only one exemption, it's a homestead, and then you add the 65 to it. So like when you go to HCAD and it's under exemptions, it says multiple.
Yeah.
The reason it says multiple is illegal for Harris County to have the word 65 on there.
What am I supposed to say?
Yeah, they can't, so they put multiple.
Yeah.
All right, so
Jesus.
I cannot, and I'm pretty good at math, but I cannot sit here and figure out how much the homestead exemption is. I will tell you that on a regular residence, it's about 11%.
So why would they say 20%? I've never thought it was 20%.
I
never thought it was.
So when I give my clients a number, and I'll tell them right off the bat, I'm wrong. It's probably gonna be more like 13, but I'm gonna say 11. Cause I don't wanna say 13 and then end up being 12.
Yeah.
And that's for the standard homestead.
How about 65?
So what is, okay, 61, I know the answer.
Okay.
Just for the school.
No, with the 65, so the 65 has a really generous Harris County exemption. It's like, I wanna say it's 170,000, something like that, that you don't pay taxes on, that first amount. And then depending on the school district, that can be a nice deduction. I don't quote 65s because I don't wanna mess up. We just 2 years ago enacted a 65 exemption for the water district. It's $10,000. We're not charging taxes on $10,000. Well, 62 cents on $10,000 is $6.20.
What is a veteran's exemption?
And I'm not gonna quote those either.
Yeah, I know, but what is it?
They're
What do you
good.
get it for?
They're
Oh,
good.
disabled veteran.
Oh,
Disabled
disabled
veteran.
veteran.
I'm sorry.
Excellent.
And it depends on the amount of disability. If you're
Right.
100%, sometimes I've been told you're not taxed at all.
I have heard that recently. I've
And
heard that,
it's,
yeah.
you know, I don't.
Well, it's like my mom's house. The school district's not charging her anything. The city of Houston is charging her. Harris County is not charging, next to nothing. The total tax bill is under $600.
That's insane. Wow.
Okay, so last legislative session, Paul Betancourt led a group of people on appraisal creep. Okay, appraisal creep is our properties increasing in value, so your tax revenue goes up, but they tell you your taxes did not increase because your tax rate did not increase. Your revenue did increase. All right. The next example in my little handout here.
Steve, can you give us a numbering sample of that?
I am. So go to not the page that I have 27.46 written. Go to the page that says 46.40, second to last page.
Second.
Okay, this is one of my clients, and I've been using her as an example now, teaching this class for over 10 years, because her house never changes. This is in Bridgestone. In 2017, she was paying, and she's a 65 exemption. She was paying $90,774. See that, 2017? And 2021, it's $132,900. If you take 90,000, subtract it from 132, and divide that by 90,000, her taxes have gone up 46.4% in 5 years. Now, go to the last page. This is a condo. This is a condo in Bridgewater Landing. Back when my stepdaughter was 18, she couldn't live with us anymore. So we put her in a condo, and this is,
Good idea.
we own this. And back 18 years ago, we paid next to nothing for it. Now it's kind of fun being a landlord. But this is an example of non-homestead. Last year, the value was 67.9. The 2021 value is 85.3. My taxes went up 25.72% in 1 year. 1 year.
So what is that where there's a cap, it can't go up more than 2%?
That's next. Go, thumb back 2 pages to the page that 27.46. Okay, this, stop me if I go too. You look at the far right-hand side, January 1st, 2021, market and appraised, okay? And then you see the January 1st, 2020, market and appraised. Okay, they're not the same number. So the appraised value in 2020 was $120,819. That is the 10% cap of value for 2020. The market, the 147.4, is what the county wanted to charge taxes for. So in 2020, this individual's taxes went up more than 10%. Excuse me, the value of their property went up more than 10%. Their taxes only went up 10%. Now jump to 2021. The appraised value is 132.9. Their appraised value went up 10% because of the cap of homestead. The market value is what the county wants to charge them, went up more than that. So what's that say? These people are going to have a guaranteed tax increase until those two numbers match. 10% a year, 10% a year until market equals appraised. The one, my Bridgestone example, several years ago, in a 5-year period, her taxes went up 80%.
Her taxes?
Her tax evaluation went up 80%. So she was guaranteed a 10% tax increase for the next 8 years, if nothing else changed. And you know it's going to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. She went with Bettencourt, and Bettencourt's been very, very helpful for her. And we've got hers knocked way down.
Mhm.
The cool thing about protesting your taxes is taxes are linear. So if I'm getting charged, if my value is $200,000 this year, and the appraisal district uses a computer algorithm, and they go by sections of neighborhoods, and they go by ages and so forth, and they say this little area is going up 4%. They're not coming to your house and looking. They're just saying you're going up 4%. Well, if I protested my taxes last year and I got my value dropped from 200,000 to 199,000, that's $1,000 a year in value that I'm not paying taxes on for the rest of the time I own that house. Because now my 3% is on the 199. I got a phone call back when we had hard lines in my neighborhood, and a guy, he said, "I'm your neighbor. You don't know who I am, and I'm fighting my property taxes. I want to know how come your house is the least expensive per square foot of any this age home in Terranova West." And I said, "I've been fighting my property taxes since 2001. Every year. I don't always win, but my property, my value is probably 75% of what I could sell it for right now." The county is only following the state law. I mean, I pick on the county all the time. The state law is what puts the laws in place to govern how these things are figured.
But do you file it yourself, Steve, or do you have like
I used to file by myself. I'm actually going really fast. This is good. So I went to at the Northwest Breakfast. We had Paul Bettencourt come speak when he was the tax assessor collector. Okay, and I remember I asked the question. I said, "Mr. Bettencourt, how come people aren't screaming about property taxes?" Because he had a statistic at that Ravenel meeting that if you owned a house in Harris County from 2000 to 2005, your tax valuation went up over 60%. And I said, "Mr. Bettencourt, how come people aren't in the streets rioting?" He said, "It doesn't hurt enough yet." That was his answer. It doesn't hurt enough yet. When I bought my house 30 years ago, all my taxes have gone up 5 times, 5-fold in 30 years. That's just crazy.
So can I go back to my question?
Yeah.
So your appraised value is limited to a 10% increase year after year.
Correct,
So it's only the appraised value.
correct. Market value can go up whatever they want it to go.
Okay.
Our tax assessor collector for the water district, she goes to all of the HCAD meetings. And she was in an HCAD meeting where all the appraisers were there, and the chief appraiser was up front. And he just said, okay, this year, all apartment complexes 25%.
If you're 65 or over, are those taxes frozen?
Okay, so, good question. Okay, so you still have the 10% cap on appraisal. Your school taxes cannot go up and are starting to go down once you turn 65. And you're not gonna ever pay more than 10% in 1 year, but if your value doesn't go up the next year, the residual catches up. So it will, eventually the residual will always catch you.
So it might be 5 1 year, 5 the next, and they're going to do
Yeah.
that.
Question, if one person is over 65 and the spouse is 50,
One person in the
only one, okay.
What about if there's like, I have a client whose mother is gonna move in with them? And she doesn't own the house.
She has to be on the title.
Okay.
So, and I've got the app on my phone where I can take your driver's license and get you your homestead exemption. Well, they made a change, on that app. It used to be, one person has to be, now they want everybody that's on the deed to have their driver's license reflecting the new address. So I was doing it for, one of the agents in the office. She was filling out her homestead form. I said, for herself. And I said, is your driver's license fixed? And she said, yeah. And so I said, here, let me show you something cool. And so I took the pictures of her front and back of her license. I said, put your email in here. I said, I'm gonna get your homestead exemption now. And she said, cool. And so I hit enter and it said, is anybody else on title? And of course her husband is, yeah. And it wanted his license too.
Oh, wow.
Harris County is doing things just like the deed for my father passing away. That's new. And that deed is only one purpose, and it's for Harris County Appraisal District to make you do that so they can find some way to strip your exemption.
Wow.
When my parents couldn't go to the mailbox anymore, I forwarded their mail. And I was getting ready for one of these classes and I happened to pull up their tax record, and under their exemptions, it said under review. What? And so I called them and they said the little green card, third class mail, did not get forwarded to me. It got sent back to Harris County and they were stripping the 65 exemption.
Wow.
And so I had to go power of attorneys. I had to send power of attorney. I had to send copies of their driver's licenses. I had to send just volumes of stuff to keep that 65 exemption, just because they can.
Wow.
Yes.
So when our clients purchase a home, does the appraised value and the market value reflect what they paid for the house?
Fabulous question. We're a non-disclosure MLS, and I asked my tax collector consultant for the district. I said, how come when a client buys a house and we're non-disclosure MLS, how does HCAD know how much that house sold for? She starts laughing. She said, they hired a bunch of out-of-work realtors. Yeah, I know. I was gonna say,
Another one.
there's 2 of them in this office.
Yeah.
There's 2 of them in this
I know the
office
other
that work for
ones.
HCAD, and they just sit there all day and pull sold values.
Oh, wow.
So my son bought a house, and of course, when he bought it, was the appraisal was like $250.
Yeah.
They paid $410. So does his value go up to?
It will. It will.
So they can jump.
It probably will.
But I pulled his tax records. If they appraised it at $403, can it jump that much?
Yes. Your homestead resets.
Oh.
So that's a good point. So if you buy her house and she has a homestead, and she buys his house, she can't file her homestead until January 1st of next year. So you get to keep her homestead exemption for the rest of the year. If she were 65 and she buys his house, she files her 65 instantly, you lose your exemption. Okay, that's one thing different on that.
So I buy a house for somebody that has a homestead
Right.
exemption, and I buy it in June,
Yes,
but I'm not, I'm an investor.
you still keep their exemption
Their exemption,
year.
okay,
for the year.
for the year.
And that's another thing. So you're an investor, you bought that property January 1st of next year. Market value and appraised value are equal instantly
Because you're not owner occupant.
because you're not a homestead. Because you lose your 10% cap.
So they get, the first year they're living in the house, they'll get previous homestead exemption if it's in place.
Yes.
But come the next
They-
January 1st, the appraised value is gonna equal market value?
If they're an investor, if they don't, if it's
No,
not.
I'm talking about homestead.
Yes, it resets. It resets on the sale
And how does it know what the sale is?
because Teresa Ray told me.
Okay, so let me just follow this forward. I buy a house from somebody that does not have homestead exemption, but I am gonna have it as a homestead. Do I, for that whole rest of the year, do I not get the benefit?
You don't get the benefit.
Okay.
But let me also share another one with you. That is, this is really important. So he's 70 and he's had his 65 for 5 years. He's selling his house and he's buying her house. I want to transfer his 65 to that house. I don't want to transfer the fact that he can have a 65. I want to transfer the values from your current 65. And to do that, you have to go to the chief appraiser of the appraisal district and get a letter, which is easily done. But that way you maintain, because your school taxes have already started to go down and you want to keep that.
So that's why people say if you're gonna retire to buy a smaller house when you're 65,
They,
because then then if you buy a bigger house than us, your tax.
well,
rate changes.
the operative thing is you're transferring that 65
You
exemption, and
transfer
whether you
to
get
her.
bigger or smaller, it's saving you more money.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so how do they transfer that?
you have to get a letter from the chief appraiser. There's just paperwork.
From
So
when
my
you left
clients
to when
need
you
to
go
do
to.
that.
If you have a 65 that's moving, a 65 plus year old that's moving, they need to contact the appraisal district for the house that they are selling and inquire about transferring their 65 to the new home. I just did one from Harris County to Montgomery County, to where we transferred a 65 exemption from Harris County up to Montgomery County.
Okay, help me here. Is it gonna be transferred the rate or the appraised, the tax value, or what's being
The
transferred?
discount.
The number one thing that's being transferred is the school district value.
Value. So even though it's $200,000 house to a $400,000 house, I can transfer the
It's the rate,
$200,000.
the rate,
The rate, not the
not the dollars.
the rate
Right.
to the new, okay.
Is it the rate that it was frozen at?
Yes.
So,
So it doesn't matter what school district you're moving to.
That I don't know.
Okay.
I would be guessing.
What if they're, I'm trying to put my mind around this, is it better for
Against the
them
law.
if they go to a house that has, like, if they retire from Harris County?
None of that matters. All that matters is you do it right, and the end result, you're gonna save some money.
okay.
What if you come from another state?
I don't know the answer to that.
Does it matter cheaper or more expensive?
And by the way, there's not everywhere in Texas has homestead exemptions.
Is it by, so it's by county?
It's by county. My brother lives in Uvalde County, and they don't have homesteads,
Wow.
although he doesn't pay anything in property taxes. So.
Okay. So Steve? I'm over 65, obviously. And just bought a condo. So I have to have my driver's license with my new address on it. For the
Correct.
senior exemption,
Correct.
so I know where I'm
Or
going.
you know,
Haven't gotten there yet.
They might accept your closing statement with a copy of your old license, but they might send it back and say,
I can try that first, or just go get a new license.
yeah, and you should be able to do it online.
Yeah, you can't.
Yes,
do
ma'am.
that.
Yeah, but it's a
interested with-
really bad photo.
Because I remember whenever we started, you were selling a house. There's been a time gap. She leased a house, but you had did you have an exemption, an over 65 exemption on your first home, on the one that you sold?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that was a compliment. So with that being said, that there's a time gap. Let's say she was at a one, I don't know, a
Yeah.
0.9. Can she call back and say, hey, there's been a lease, a 2-year lease gap, but I now am purchasing a condo. I'd like to take advantage of my previous tax.
I
that
think
had."
too much time has gone by,
Okay,
but it'd be worth looking into.
yeah, why not call
No,
her?
Sure.
That is a good idea.
Yeah, although the new photo would be appreciated.
Yeah.
So now with the looming,
It's okay.
the looming possibility of income tax changes, how long do you have to live in a house to where, you have no capital gains, or the capital gains, for a married and single kick in? How many years out of 5 years?
2.
Okay, that's where I'm headed. So with our increasing values right now, we're probably gonna see some of these tax laws change. And,
Yeah.
and then what we're talking about is if, you have a house that goes up in value and you have not lived there 2 out of the last 5 years, then the title company is going to 1099 you on the increase in value. Because it's law.
But it's always been the law, it's not new.
It's always been law.
But you're saying that that's possibly going to change.
I've heard that's on the law. Another thing that I've heard is there's a bill that's been filed in the state legislature by the representative in Kingwood that, it's estimated that Lake Houston has silted up maybe 20 to 30% of volume because of all the sand pits down the San Jacinto River and all the flooding. And there's no money to do any dredging, right? So they passed a bill, filed a bill, it's not passed, to perpetually get the sand out of Lake Houston. And it's millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And the fun part is, you know how he wants to pay for that? He wants to add it to your surface water fee.
Can you slap these people out of office?
You're, within 5 years, unless something happens with energy, which that's going the wrong direction too, your water bill is going to be more than your electric bill.
Wow.
It just is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Other thing, if you mentioned to Betancourt,
Uh-huh.
how they charge.
Oh, so
To protest.
protesting. So I've used Betancourt, I've used O'Connor Associates. And their rates have changed somewhat because there's some different ways they can protest. But when I signed up for Betancourt, I wrote a check for $75. And that got credited the first bill. They saved me money. And now I pay him 40% of the tax dollars they saved me for first year only. From that point on, it's mine. O'Connor doesn't charge you anything up front, but it's 50% of what they save you.
But it's interesting how they charge, because when you save, you typically are gonna save more than you expect.
Always.
Always, so it's
Always.
still worth.
And they
Yeah.
just charge you for that.
And
So
there's a
how much
price.
did you pay
Yes,
last
okay.
year?
The most I've ever had to pay on my house in Terranova West, I had to run a check for $500 once. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of tax savings.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, that was $1,000 roughly,
Mhm.
and that
Cumulative.
forever. I get to keep all of it forever.
How is it forever though? Because
Because the
raises
percentage goes up off your new base. Oh, another thing, I listened to a financial show this week, and they were talking about some of the stuff that the current administration is wanting to put on the tax block. And they're talking a whole lot about inheritance, changes in inheritance laws and stuff. but the one that really caught my attention was say it right, the stepped up basis on death. Okay, so dad passed last year. His half of the house goes to my mother at current value. Stepped up basis. That means my dad's basis in the house went to the current basis on death. When my mother passes, the value be re-stepped up to whatever the current market value is for that house. So we will not be paying capital gains taxes on the increase.
Yeah.
My parents bought that house in 1968 for $27,500. And it's somewhere in the threes. But they're talking about taking that away, and not just for real estate, stocks, investments, 401ks, everything. That's huge.
So does that mean they would tax the person who inherited on the
Yes.
capital gains of $120,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
And in
Okay.
some countries, it's so high, that's why a lot of landed families have gone bankrupt, or they've just sold it off to get it off the books. Because inheritance tax is so high in some countries.
Can that be
Families have
protected with
lost
1031?
If it's an investment property, possibly. Yeah. So I wanted to
Oh,
talk
I
just.
understand.
I want to talk a little bit about, and this is for our clients, just some file in the back of your head. So we're talking about your son bought a house. And what was the value of the house when they bought it? Excuse me, what was the value on tax records when they bought it?
It was somewhere in the twos, like
Okay.
250,
And what they paid for it?
410.
Great example. Okay, so that's $160,000. And if it's a $3 tax rate, that's $4,800 in taxes a year. All right, this is where it really gets scary. When did he buy the house?
It's 2 years ago, so 2019.
Okay, well, let's just say he bought it today. And January 1 hits, and Teresa Ray tells him that he paid $410,000.
Did he pay what?
She told him that they paid $410,000.
Okay.
So his new value, January 1st of next year, is $410,000. When does he find out?
Not till,
Gets the bill at the end of the year.
yeah,
Tax bills come out in November. Escrow won't reset till the next April. We were just talking about his house alone, that's $4,600 a year, but now we're a year behind, so it's double. It's $9,200 he's behind.
and see, I had someone buy Longwood, and they paid, the value on the tax records was so below. And I argued with the mortgage lender, which was not.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second.
I argued with
So-
him and said, her tax rate is gonna go up. Oh, no, they can't do that. I'm
Okay,
like,
this is where I can argue that us as real estate professionals are more valuable on new construction than we are resale.
but this was resale.
I know, but hang on. And Sharon's gonna remember this, back in the 80s and 90s, this was a huge problem. Before the financial meltdown particularly, in 2007 and 8. It is legal for a builder to figure the property taxes on the current value of the property. They're building a house, it's valued at a vacant lot. So their mortgage company qualifies you for a loan based on lot value, not on structure.
Right.
Takes 2 years to get caught up with it, okay? I can take you to neighborhoods where 80% of the neighborhood went into foreclosure because they were $10,000 behind, like that. And it was legal. That's why we're there. I never ask the builder how much the property taxes. What's the tax rate? And when we go to the mortgage company, I make sure the mortgage company uses the tax rate, not the taxes.
So you can talk to the mortgage company and say,
So, okay, let's just say the mortgage company won't talk to you. Mimi, you're my client. I'm having a heart attack, and I'm telling Mimi, that's not what your house payment's gonna be. I know the numbers, this is what your house payment's gonna be.
So the title company collects what the mortgage company tells them to collect?
The title company collects taxes based on the value that they pull for the tax cert.
So that on a new home, it would, but they can't do, they have to do it exactly, or can they estimate what they think it's gonna be?
I've had builders estimate and
So they
collect
did, so the
taxes.
buyer didn't come back to them and say.
Right, I've had,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and so the builder's not on the hook for the increased value for the, you know, and that's another thing Harris County is doing, they're starting to partially value half-built homes, which is just annoying.
Well,
Because
Montgomery County is guilty of that
So,
too.
yeah, they all are, they just,
They want
you-
money and they can do it.
they want money, yeah.
So why, like, there's new construction down on Stewart, right? So on the syntax part, on the tax rate is 3.1.
Mhm.
KV across the street, the tax rate is 2.8.
It's a different water district. It's a different water district.
They have
The
a
ones on
different
that
school
side are Oak
Okay.
Creek, the
School
ones on this side are,
Heatherwood.
Heatherwood. Yeah, just different water district. We were going somewhere.
And
Different schools.
There, yeah, sure,
different
sure,
standards
yeah,
too.
yeah, it's tax rate. So, when you file a protest for your property taxes, the county has to have a certain percentage of all properties past the protest mark to do what's called certified value. Okay, certified value comes in the fall. And that's basically saying, okay, the county certifies this is how much value the county has, so water districts can set their tax rates, okay? So we have to have certified value. So when the county does tax protests, they hit all the commercial properties first, they hit the big value properties, because they gotta get that percentage taken care of to certify value. So your little condos and stuff, may not even be protested this year. It may go into next year. Fabulous example. A couple of years ago, we platted 15 acres of land here in Spring. And because we were in the ETJ of Houston, I had to do it with the city of Houston, even though it's not in the city limits, and pay them. And the county, and the flood control, anyway. So when we split the property from 15 acres into 5 lots, the county revalued, and it was off the charts. So she protested, and protests are what, by the end of May, something like middle of May, they moved it up for 2 weeks. And so then this, sometimes the county just makes me want to scream. So she filed her protest, and Bettencourt's doing it for her. And hadn't been heard in January. And then February 1st hits. The county will not hear on protests on delinquent properties. And they will not,
That is red tape.
they will not send a tax bill out on a property that's being protested. How does that affect us? We sell a house to our client, you sell a house to your son files a protest. It does not get heard until February. His mortgage company's not gonna pay a bill they don't get. So his property taxes don't get paid. And now he's delinquent. And now he loses his protest because he's delinquent.
Oh my God.
So
And then they bump you up 20% because you're doing.
can you
No,
pay it anyway?
you're delinquent. You can pay it anyway, sure.
And would
So-
it
so-
not through your
oh,
escrow?
Fabulous. My little condo that I got, you don't think that I'm pulling tax bills out of HCAD and paying them before I get them?
Yeah.
Because I protest that condo every year, and it never gets heard in the same year. It's always in January, February, when I pay my tax bill.
But if it's escrow, can you bypass your mortgage company and pay
It's
it
between
anyway?
you and your
Tell them you paid it.
your mortgage handler. Yeah.
And show 'em?
That's pretty much most of what I had. Any questions?
I just wanted to say one thing on the new home deal. Whenever I take clients to new houses, I look, like we're going under contract or whatever. I look at what the tax rate is and I tell my clients beforehand. And I say, this builder is going to escrow, your escrow is not going to include this 3.2. So you need to put $400 a month away.
Do the exact same thing.
This is what I tell my clients.
Do the exact
Put it
same
away
thing.
now,
Yeah.
or you will be charged $800, which is twice that, on your house payment.
Yeah, because so when you get your escrow, when your escrow gets
Yeah,
analyzed
yeah.
the following year, you have a choice of your
Paying
payment
it
going up double
yeah,
or
right,
write us a check and catch up.
Right.
Yeah, no,
So
I'm with you 100%. And I, many years, I can't tell you. So when I take somebody into new construction, I bring them in and I let the salesperson do their thing. And I'm standing in the background listening to hear things I don't want to hear. And that's when I say stuff. I had a couple in the Woodlands years ago. He's an engineer, by the way, chemical engineer, smart guy. And this was back 15 years ago, before double pane windows were standard. And this was Emerald Homes, who's been bought, purchased a couple times. And this sales lady was there, and my guy was from Colombia, and the wife was from Spain. And my Spanish, I could understand her sometimes. He just talked too fast. And he asked the sales lady, how come your standard house does not come with double pane windows? It's an upgrade. And I swear her response was, well, we found that double pane windows mess up your air conditioning.
Oh my God. Where did you pull that out?
And he said,
There's a reason they don't have licenses.
yeah,
Yeah.
he, he started laughing. He talked to Mary. Mary talked back to him, and I could understand what Mary said, and I started laughing. And they looked at me and said, comprendo? And I said, yeah, idiot. By the way, that just one,
I know.
one circle of influence story, because Mary and Olega are really good friends of mine. I helped a for sale by owner in my neighborhood because I met him at a garage sale.
Oh.
And all I did was answer questions. I didn't do anything. I didn't get paid. So she asked me how many business cards I had. And I said, I got a couple in my wallet. She said, no, your trucks. I want a stack. She said, because we're leaving our for sale by owner sign out front, and everybody that knocks on our doors getting your card. So I got to list and sell the house of the people that bought their house. She called me and says, Leo's here. What are you doing? Get over here. So I drove over to their house. Leo needed to buy a house. I sold him the house that week. I've subsequently sold Leo 3 other houses. Leo referred Olega to me. Olega and Mary are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes.
Wow.
Their son's home, and now their other son and his wife are looking in the Woodlands in the 700s. And that's from helping a for sale by owner, just answer questions, not getting paid.
That's great.
Instead of copying an attitude and saying, good luck, jerk.
So talking about attitude.
You never know.
Talk about an attitude and talking about when we get told no. One of my favorite circle of influence things, and any of y'all can ask JD this question and he'll light it like a Christmas tree. Ask JD how he feels about being in second place. He went on a listing appointment. He knew he was getting a listing appointment. It was in his neighborhood. And then 2 days later, there's another real estate sign in the front yard. And long story short, he came to me and he's mad, he's dejected and hurt. And I said, no, man, call him on the phone and say, I'm here for you. I'm in second place. I said, you hear something you don't like, you call me. Well, he had his sign out front 3 weeks later.
Is that ethical?
He was already talking to those people. He did not solicit their listing.
Okay.
He was already in conversation with the people. In my opinion, he was just answering questions, and he went on a full-blown listing presentation. And by the way, if I go on a listing presentation and I don't get it, am I okay calling him and asking him why? Is that okay?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
Just so I can do better at what
Yeah,
I
just
do.
so I can serve my friends better, can you tell me what I could have done better? Cut your commission?
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions?
You
mentioned
ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction. It means the city of Houston, Conroe, whoever, claims this land to be theirs, but doesn't do anything with it.
It keeps what they did is they didn't want people to vote,
Yes.
but they didn't want them to incorporate, and so they wanted to save the tax base. So basically, you can't, in the ETJ, they can't incorporate, but the city can grab you at any time they feel like it, but they don't grab you because number one, they don't want, they can't afford it to do the water, and number two, they would really rather not have it
And,
In the
and the
in the city election.
mayor.
the Woodlands is
They
a
incorporate.
fabulous example of
Their
that.
townships.
Their township now, however, you don't think City of Houston got some money out of that?
Yeah,
So what's the
Big.
difference in a town?
well, they're not in the ETJ in Houston.
They're out of the
Okay, they're out of
ETJ. They're no longer, I've heard there's a time limit on that township, but I don't know for sure. But if there's no time limit, the City of Houston will never annex.
So they pay for all their own infrastructure.
And the cool thing about that, when they went to the township, is back in the olden days, your HOA fee was an assessment, which it was based on value. Their HOA has gone to the township fee, which I believe is tax deductible.
And you can use all the.
Yeah.
All the
Everything.
pools and everything.
I know we keep emphasizing the homesteads. I just want to clarify, even if it has a homestead on it from the previous person, because it switches homesteads to a new one, that's why they can do that jump where they find out that it might not, whatever the new market value is, and it's gonna be based on that new one.
It's because the property changed hands.
Okay, so it
Your
changed
10% cap, your cap on value is for you.
for just me by myself.
Right.
Okay, so if it's even though it has a homestead on it, goes to a new one, it's gonna start being charged for the full
Market
10.
value.
Even though we're non-disclosure, they're gonna find out, right? They're the
Okay,
full
and,
market value.
and an
What if-
extension on that is, once that market value changes, which takes about 2 years to catch up, we should be advising our clients to save the difference about the tax rate so that they don't get hit with
The
minimum.
market
That's
value
only on the new
you're saying that
Only
the
on new
new
homes,
buyer
okay.
starts paying on market value.
Correct.
So there's no
Okay.
catch up.
It's only on the
Okay.
new homes.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
just-
And
Rebuilds.
if they find out what the house sold for, it's gonna be a much higher market.
And they will find out.
But I'm telling you guys, just hold on to your seats, because the values are coming out,
Oh.
and we're seeing 20%.
Yeah.
Mine
I
went,
just looked at
my
mine.
little
Yeah.
condo went
Why?
from 93,000 to 119.
And I have one more question about the capital gains then. Okay, so I have example client, bought a new construction home, hasn't even been a year, maybe been a year. They're getting a divorce now, so we have to sell the house. So they have not resided in the home for 2 years. So they're gonna have to pay capital gains, correct? Because they
And-
have to have resided in it for at least 2 years.
Owned
And
it till 5.
And
let's just say it's less than a year,
Mhm.
now we're talking short-term capital gains, not long-term.
okay,
But what they can do is, any of the expenses that they had, that they incurred in the house that 2 years, they
Yes.
can make it to lower their gain.
Anything
So they
they
need a
spend.
CPA.
okay, so, what if they haven't, because the question is, have you resided in the home?
Two
The
out of
title
five.
company, 2 out of 5 years. What if they haven't even lived in the home? What if they've only lived in the home for 2 years or two,
But they haven't owned it for 5 years, so.
but they haven't owned it for 5?
No, it's two of the two.
No,
Two
they've
out of
owned,
5.
they've owned it less than 5 years.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that goes back in favor of the homeowner. If you owned it 2 years, you're clear.
Okay, as long as you live
At least
over 2
If,
years.
if you owned it for 10 years and you rented it for 8 and lived in it the last 2 years, you're good.
Okay.
That's why when we say 2 out of 5, because it can be on either end of
Do
the
you have to
5.
live in it to declare it as a homestead? Because some people have 2 homes And you could choose the one that you want
Yes.
to.
Yeah,
So
you'll
you'll
declare your primary residence.
So just because you moved out doesn't necessarily mean that you would say it's not your homestead. You can declare one out.
So my mother is in a home. She's not ever gonna go back to her home. But it is her primary residence. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
very good, thank you.
So basically.
Oh, yeah, hey.
Taxes.
Hey, y'all.
Taxes.
This is
Just get
So
ready.
this is from the Regional Water Authority. And it's a magazine, you get it in the mail, it comes out a couple of times a year. It is chock full of some pictures of the Trinity River project. It's a great piece.
Oh, speaking of taxes, though, one of the proposals is to get rid of the 1099 exchanges.
Yes.
Right.
I heard that too.
Yeah, which means that
1031?
1090.
No, it's not 1099, it's 1031.
1031. Yeah, they
1031.
wanna do away
They
with
want
that.
to do away with it.
Well, yeah.
Investors
Yeah.
cannot.
So I know I wanna do away with that.
It killed it.
I would say so. How much?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Tree pack.
They gotta do that.
Yeah.
This is all
That's-
Commission.
Yes.
Insignificant.
Yeah, oh, it's worth, no, it's not.
Thanks. Before I came in, I was on the camera.
Or maybe a surveyor.
No.
Through FEMA,
Ask the genius right there. That's a compliment.
where did I get, that is, that was good. Where would we get a elevation certificate?
And a surveyor.
A survey.
And it's to add, so if you're gonna have a survey done on the property,
Yeah, we are.
last time I was quoted, it was like $100 to get an
Okay.
elevation
So
survey.
when
You know,
they
for these
do
people that
the
live in
survey,
waterfront communities like,
so when they do the survey, that's something that we ask for additionally, or?
if you want it, but if you're in the 500 year, the 100 year, you're gonna have that. For your flood insurance rate.
Yeah.
So you want how do you want this put back together, Sean?
Sir?
How do you want this put